Welcome to Et Voilà, a podcast that unveils the truth with real stories, vulnerable moments, and learning experiences that shape our industry. This podcast is for wedding and event professionals. We're your hosts, Cristy Fernandez
and Isabelle Kline. With each of us having over 20 years of experience under our belts in the industry, we felt it was time to pull back the curtain. In spite of how much our industry is full of smoke and mirrors, and have honest conversations.
All right, Isabelle, here we are.
Hello.
So I know most people tend to ask the question of like how you got your beginnings and how you got to decide to be a planner, but I'm going to shake things up a little bit. And I just kind of want to ask you a question a little bit differently. And that is, I'd love to hear your journey of what was your lowest point in your business? Tell me about that and tell me the story behind it if you can.
For sure. Well, after, it's almost funny because when I think about it, it's almost funny how it's a little bit of a hard question because after 20 plus years of being in the industry, I've had several. But probably the biggest one that stands out is when the economy hit hard and I had to let go of my dream, my shop, everything I worked so hard for and built, and just let it go completely, which was almost like someone punching you in the gut, just because it almost felt like I failed. And you try not to take it personally, but when you see things that you have to let go, like literally, I didn't even care to sell or sell my business. I just let everything go. And that was the lowest point in my business. Because like I said, I worked so hard for 10 years to get to that point. And then to just see it all go for nothing was tough.
Oh, I can only imagine for sure. And tell me, so, I mean, obviously you had to let go of your business. What was your business at that moment in time? And what did that look like for you initially when you kind of started it that got to the point where you had to let go of that business?
I thrive off of, I feel like everything happens for a reason. And if it's meant to be, it'll fall in place. I feel if it's forced, then it's not a good fit. Not only that goes for customers, but it also goes for your placement in your lifestyle in business as well. So I always felt like when the opportunity was there, I grabbed it. And that was one point of starting my career is I always wanted this storefronts in between LA and Orange County. I felt like location was so important that it was drilled in my head. So this one location that I absolutely adored and loved was a row of cottage houses that was right in the middle of those two Mecca areas. And I contacted the owners and just told them if there was ever an opportunity for me to rent out this space, that I would want to be one of the first ones to know that. And this sweet little old lady that owned the property, she told me, honey, nobody's moved out for over 20 years. I don't foresee that happening. But if it ever does, I'll let you know. A year later, I got that phone call and she said, guess what?
What was she wrong?
Yeah, she's like, I can't believe this, but I didn't forget about our conversation and I had your information and I want to offer one of the storefronts that have become available to you because I could tell in your passion, your voice that you really wanted it. And so again, falling back on my philosophies, I thought, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and grab that chance and run with it. And I did. I did it on a bare pocket budget. I had a little savings and took what little savings I had and built my little store. Did a lot of the hard work myself. I went thrifting for vintage furniture and would paint it and redo it and painted the store and did what I can to open it up. And that's why it was something that meant a lot to me because it wasn't just given to me. I put the time and effort, hard work with that. And so that's why when you ask about the lowest point of, my career, it was just kind of like your baby. You put so much into it and watched it grow over the years. And then to see it all go, was pretty tough.
For sure. For sure. How did you go up from there? And, you have your lowest point in your life or one of your lowest points in your life where you have worked hard, put in your blood, sweat, and tears into this place, a lot of pride into this place, and then having to close doors during the economic recession. What was the up from there?
To be honest, and not to sugarcoat anything, in a way it was a relief too, just because it felt like I was always just working to pay the bills. So it got to the point where I was like, you know what? Maybe this is a little bit blessing in disguise. Yes, it was a punch to the gut because I felt like a failure. But when I looked around me at that time and when I saw my friends losing homes and toys and, I just felt like, okay, I'm not in it alone. That made me feel a little bit better, but it also felt like I needed a reset. And I was forced to be in that reset, but it was a good reset because I was just working to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me a little bit about that reset moment where you kind of reinvented yourself, right? So you've closed the doors to your shop. You say, okay, here's a new beginning. What was that journey like to kind of reinvent yourself, if you will, in this industry? And how did you get back into the industry? And explain that journey if you can.
I didn't. It took a couple of years. I didn't want to get back. I was burned out. I was tired of being so stressed out. So I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. And I took a long break and wanted to get back into the industry that I started with at a very young age. And that was going back into the hospital field. So I took a couple of years off because I got pregnant and had restarted, in fact, not only giving up my business, but restarted a little family, moved to different states. It was a lot of changes at that time. And that's why I'm saying it was a great reset. And I waited till my son got a couple of years old and thought, okay, I need to go back to work eventually. And I started to apply for hospital positions I had. And they told me, you haven't been around for 10 plus years. You're going to have to start from the bottom. And that was another punch in the gut.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, which I understand, it was a while. And so I just thought to myself, I didn't want to start from the bottom. It's kind of heart wrenching. And then my husband came home and just said, I have someone that I know getting married and they would love to speak to you if you don't mind speaking to them. And that's what got me sucked back into the industry.
Wow.
It started all back again, just having that conversation with that couple.
Yeah. Yeah. And so knowing that experience that you had and knowing the new experience that you were about to have, were there things that you told yourself at that moment in time that you said, never again, or I'm going to do this differently, lesson learned, etc.? Anything along those lines that at that point in time, you're kind of now going through, pulling on a new thread, if you will, but also having had that history of having had to close your doors in your shop. What were the things that you kind of told yourself in that journey ahead of you?
Yes, for sure. My journey was that I don't want to work anymore just to pay the bills. I wanted to work smarter, not harder. And I felt that I didn't need brick and mortar to prove to anybody, and that I would take those lessons and be better what I do, but also understand that my salvation and working was not only to work all the time, but also to enjoy the fruits of my labor and make goals for myself, not just goals in business.
Sure. So give me a for instance that maybe you allowed yourself those opportunities to change that. Like give me an example of where some tangible examples, if you can, where you specifically set out to do exactly what you just said.
Yeah, finding some new passions and loves that I didn't even know at the time, but starting to travel more, take my family with me, living in the moment and enjoying life was huge. Because not only are we selling memories for our clients, but I thought, gosh, I'm doing this for everybody else but myself.
Yeah.
And so that's where I was like, I need to start living life more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, number one for me was enjoying traveling with my family because those memories will last a lifetime.
For sure. I think definitely the experiences are always what stays with us. And that goes for you, your family, your kids. Those are the things that always you remember. You can
Yeah.
always recall a trip or an experience together for sure. So what are other things that perhaps you were able to grow from that experience of the past that you've applied in your life now? Any other tips that you, knowing what you knew then and have been able to apply to this life now, what are some other things that you were able to implement?
I had a couple employees, but now I have an actual team, a big team, and we're like family. And I think that's huge. Before, I always wanted to do it myself because I thought that would save me money. But in the long run, you're doing it yourself and you're working countless hours, burning both ends of your
The wick.
yeah, the wick, and being burned out, thinking I could do this and, save money here and there. And as a single mom with 3 babies, when I was in that position, yes, I had to really see what I could do to survive. But now I'm just like, no, it makes sense to have, yeah, you spend a little bit of money, but you have more help. You pay for people that are better, in marketing or taxes and all this other stuff that you can just let go and let them do what they're good at. So it frees up your time. And that was a huge lesson learned too, that has helped for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely one of those, especially it's almost a relief to know that someone else actually enjoys doing the thing that you don't love doing. Right?
Yeah.
When you can actually give them something that they could do for your business, but that you don't enjoy doing it because it's just not either your expertise or you just, you know how to do it, but you just don't enjoy it, period. And that someone else can do that for you.
Yeah.
It's a win-win situation. It frees up a lot of your time to do more of the things you do love, but also, and propels you forward because now you're putting your efforts in better places, both, you and the person that you're offloading that work to.
For sure.
So,
and I even give up things that I do love.
Yeah.
Because now at least it allows more time for myself. Like I said, I'm not working only just to work and work and work. Now it's nice that I have people on my team that I could just let go and let them do what they do good too. And then just enjoy more of the fruits of the labor for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know when I asked you, to be part of this podcast in the first place, like what gravitated you to being here and partaking on this adventure with me? I'm curious to know.
Oh, well, your personality, Cristy. That's first and foremost. I think when we first met and started to get to know each other, it was like kindred spirits because in this industry, it's been sometimes difficult to align with people that have the same values, kindness, the heart. There's just so much more just than showing up. I mean, I've done it from the beginning with so much passion and heart. In fact, I get still scolded by my own group and my family. You give too much, give too much. And that's just me. I'm just a giving heart of nature. So when I got to meet you, I felt we could relate in that aspect that it's, we're special people in this industry and that give a lot but it's so passionate and love what we do. And even though sometimes we gripe, but we're still in it because we know the satisfaction of making people happy is huge. It just makes us feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why when I noticed that about you, I just thought, wow, this is very special. But then also another thing we had in common was the years of experience, what we've gone through and how we have this little pearls and nuggets of knowledge or we're open to always learning too, that it would be nice to share with others.
Definitely.
And talk about it and then feel like we're not alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's some of the things that you and I have, discussed in the past is just like the more you talk to people, the more vulnerable you are with people, the more you realize really, truly we're all experiencing similar things, and we're all going through experiences that we can learn from each other too, in so many ways, that if we can, in some ways, even almost make somebody feel a little bit more sane, in the process. That's the goal. So.
Okay, Cristy, now you're on the hot spot.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So now I would like to ask you, what was your lowest point of your career? And maybe tell us how many years, if you don't mind, too. That way we can understand the bandwidth, too, of the years.
Sure.
And where it came.
Well, so I started my business in 2001, but I would say, kind of like what you said earlier, we've had a roller coaster ride for sure. And we did definitely the economic recession in 2008, where we had a retail product that were in a bunch of different stores. So we were in 100 plus stores nationwide, and that dwindled down to like 10 stores during the recession. That was a hard time, but we managed to pivot. All right. I would say my even lowest point was actually in 2016. So what is that now? 8 years ago? My husband and my daughter were in a terrible car accident, and I'm coming from work. I get off of work and super tired, and it's a wintry kind of cold day. And I called my daughter, my husband neither picked up, and I called my daughter again and no pickup. And then I called my husband again, and finally my daughter picks up, and she's like, oh, I was like, hey, I'm on my way home, just everything okay? And she's like, oh, we got into a car accident. And at first I'm thinking fender bender. Mm-hmm. She's like, yeah, I'm in the back of an ambulance. And of course, you're just like, this is what you don't expect those words coming out.
Yeah.
And it was a really freak of an accident. This guy was just not paying attention, wasn't a drunk driver, wasn't under the influence of any kind, but was not paying attention, was going on the street that my husband and my daughter were driving home from or singing lessons, and didn't stop right into the back of his car, his truck. And he hit several cars in front and ended up down in this ditch and hit a tree at the very bottom. His car was completely totaled. And the aftermath of that was just a nightmare. I had, of course, I get there and there's a lot of medical issues that transpired because of that, and trauma and countless therapy visits and so forth. And at a time where I needed to lean on my employees, I found their true colors coming through, where they were more concerned about their well-being and their next paycheck versus my family and just the trauma that we were experiencing. And so I made a very difficult decision to essentially downsize and close our storefront, and also downsize in the number of employees that we had to my husband and myself. Like you, I felt like a failure. I felt like I couldn't make ends meet. Like I didn't know I didn't have what it took to figure out how to keep things afloat. But I was at a moment where I just needed to be able to quiet the noise that was going around. It was just a lot going on in my family life, and I needed to be able to have a constant. And when I couldn't lean on my team at work, I decided to quiet that noise in a way. But it was also a blessing in disguise as well, because it gave me an opportunity to rethink how I wanted to be able to move forward from there with my business. We were still very much kind of more mass volume production rather than smaller productions, in terms of being more intentional with our clients and that kind of thing. So yeah, it was a good year of that kind of closing the doors, shutting down the store, selling some things, moving things into, storage, kind of moving things back at the house, and trying to kind of keep my cool around all things that were changing in the home front as well, and be that solid person for everyone. So that was for sure my lowest point.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm so glad everybody, first of all, is okay, but that is very traumatic.
Thank you.
Getting that phone call is the worst. And feeling like you can't even get there in enough time, like it just, I can't imagine. So just listening to you, which was so compelling, but definitely when, I know at the time you probably felt like a failure, but when did you have the foresight to see like, no, this ended up working, and you think on your family safe, but then eventually with all those decisions that it was maybe a better move in the end.
Honestly, I think I got to that point maybe, it was a journey. It was a process, like it wasn't an overnight sensation where I got there. And I would probably say it wasn't until about a year and a half, maybe even 2 years where I was like, this was for the right. I was just so busy kind of taking care of folding things and tucking things away and taking care of the immediate needs and only trying to make ends meet for that immediate moment of notice. So when I started kind of like going, okay, I want to try to focus on the right type of business, and rather than just kind of like going right back to where I was, but really kind of being more intentional with where I needed to be, both in the types of clients that I was doing and the type of work I was producing and creating and in the volume, because I didn't have a structure anymore to be able to do so. So I had to rethink all of that. I think, like I said, it was a good probably year and a half before I realized, okay, this was actually a good thing, and as it probably is for some of us, it's like we go through those experiences and it takes some time or we're on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Because, it does take a little time to really have that sight and be like, you know what, it ended up. Because remember, to me, back to my philosophy of like, oh, everything happens for a reason. And you kind of have to sometimes just go with it and not fight it.
Yeah.
That's why I was curious how long it took you to feel like, okay, I'm not a failure. And this, in fact, was a little bit more of a reason why I had to shut my doors, and now it all makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was, now in hindsight, how did you get from there? And from the beginning, tell us a little bit and why you started. But also I wanted to know one quick question before you start.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, like for me, I wanted to throw the towel in, and I did for a couple of years. You didn't want to do that, just out of curiosity.
It's funny. I know. And it's funny because Kevin's my husband and my business partner. And he will always, say like, man, Cristy, you have an undying passion for what you do. Yeah. And it's true. I do. And so I will always find a way to have that creative outlet that I'm going to want to pursue. And I think that for me is the thing that's kind of my why. I mean, it's maybe a little selfish, but it is my why. It's like that, that I seek that creative outlet for sure and express myself the best doing it in the world of graphic design and stationery and event design and so forth. So I always gravitate to that. It fills my cup in a way that it feels like it gives me a sense of purpose, but it also helps me kind of what you were saying earlier in that hospitality business. I'm not just doing it for myself. I'm also doing it for my clients. And the satisfaction that I get when someone says, oh my gosh, this was more than what I could have ever thought of or dreamt of. To me, that's, so rewarding. It pays in so many ways that I can't even quantify it. I can't like put a dollar amount to it. It's just, it fills my cup in so many ways. So yes, I did. Plus, I also felt like I had to make ends meet. Like it was, even though all of this was happening, I'm still juggling doing some of the orders myself, back at the home, back with everything moved back into the storage and so forth. I still managed to keep pushing some orders out because I had that in me to kind of be like, I can't ever disappoint a client. To me, that's like, that is a no in my book, So I did find that the need to kind of make ends meet, but also the passion to kind of want to keep going. And I knew there was probably an opportunity to kind of redefine what that was for me at that point. It's like, okay, if it wasn't the higher volume of orders that we were doing, what is that? What can I actually do? What is within my power to do? Right then and there. So, yeah.
This just made me realize that it's not only that we have a gift. I believe we both have this amazing gift for what we do, but it's also personality.
Yeah.
It's also both of those things that we're talking about. Like it just came like in full circle. Like,
Yeah.
yes, we have this passion and we have this gift, but also your personality that keeps you driven and the care that you have for your clients. So tell me a little bit now about your beginning, and also throw in, Cristy, because I know you get asked this question, how you came up with the name as well, if you don't mind me asking.
I don't mind at all.
I know that you know is part of the beginning as well, right?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. So, well, Kevin and I wanted to have the word lucky in the name. We knew that from the beginning. We just kind of felt like we were lucky.
Okay.
And then we kept on like brainstorming. We went out to dinner one time and we were like, oh, we got maybe like a drink too many or what have you. And we were like, okay, lucky tomato, lucky fries, lucky,
kind of being silly.
Right. We started being silly and we're like, okay. And we were like, lucky onion. And we looked at each other. We're like, okay, well, that kind of had a ring to it. I guess no pun intended. And then, we're like, well, let's table it. We've had this conversation for too long, and my husband's last name is Esslinger. And so it comes from Germany. His family is actually originally from, like, he's been able to do all his genealogy research all the way back to, I want to say early 1400s, all the way back to Germany.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, he's a history buff if there ever was one. So anyway, so he was doing research and finding out that like his family, there's a town called Esslingen, which is where his last name is from, actually. And the townspeople of Esslingen actually throw annual festivals every year. But to scare away the bad spirits, they hang onions all around. And so the townspeople were dubbed the little onions.
Oh, so cute.
And we were like, oh my gosh, it's getting full circle for us. And we're like, we're the lucky little onions. And we dropped the word little and we just said, we're lucky onions.
Okay. Oh,
so that's how our name came about. There's been so many stories from people that are probably far better than ours as far as like the rationale behind our name.
That makes sense. It makes it like a story. That's why it's neat to talk about it too.
That's the real reason behind it. And so we started the business actually because I was based out of New York. We were living there. And at the time, we both wanted to start a business. He always had that entrepreneurial, bone in his body, and he ignited that in me as well, for sure. So we knew we wanted to do that. And that kind of like was the beginnings. But I was working in the fashion industry for a company where I was doing all of their branding and wayfinding signage and all that good stuff. And the role in which I was fulfilling for them was above and beyond what we had agreed as my position there. And they were the ones who brought up like, well, we could pay you as a freelancer on the side for these projects. And they were projects like lookbooks and custom fabric wrapped books and boxes and so forth, and presentations that we would make. So we would start kind of creating projects on the side as we were both working full time, and it fulfilled our needs, if you will. And then, one thing led to another, where from working there, we did nonprofit events and doing designs for those. And from there, we did some more events in the social realm as well. And then, as everybody, I think, in the industry knows someone who's like, oh, can you do my invitations? Can you do my wedding? And so we started accepting those types of projects, and that's how we came about. And then come 2007, we decided to launch our own product line. So we started off with 1, went to 3, then up to 12 different product lines where people carry our products in their stores to order custom invitations from their stores, from us to place, and we would fulfill them for them. So that was our business model for a good long streak. And then, of course, we know what happened with the economy and so forth. So that's kind of how we got to, we eventually got to where we were, back in 2016. And then now here, where we're more specific to a more tailored approach for our clients. But
that's amazing. And that's something that we both have in common, because I told you I started my storefront with stationery. Yeah. And that's why I always pay so much respect for what you do, because I know the blood, sweat, and tears that what goes into it, the creativity, the meeting of deadlines, making sure all the I's and T's are crossed. And God forbid, if one thing goes wrong, you have to redo everything. It's stressful too.
Yeah.
But here you are still after all these years and going through the ups and downs, the economy, the unfortunate accident that you experienced, like you said, that was your low, but here you have strived and have succeeded and do the best work, in my opinion, because we've done projects together.
Yeah.
And it's always such an honor to see your work come all together, especially on the day for me, because I don't get to see so much of the invitations that go out. But look at how many weddings we've done where it's just so beautiful, making sure from pillows to menus to these beautiful design boards that people get to, see through in the cocktail, look at finding their names and stuff like that. We've done some great work together, and I know the clients are so happy, and it makes it so memorable.
Yeah.
But it's really, not a lot of people know how much it goes to it. So what, now the question is to you too, Cristy, what would you like to see this podcast, go towards? And
absolutely. No, I mean, I think kind of to what you mentioned before, also, I think there's just so much that I think in my experience, your experience, where we both have realized, that we don't have to go through these experiences alone.
Yeah.
And that there's also times too where I feel like this industry is just so full of smoke and mirrors, and social media makes us feel like everybody else has it all figured out. And in reality, I think we're all figuring it out. Even 20 plus some years later, I'm still figuring things out, right? And I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I still feel like there's never going to really be a moment where I'm going to be like, I'm done learning. That's it. I feel like we can all learn from each other, and we're maybe just experiencing them at different, stages of our lives. But I feel like we can all kind of really, truly kind of reach out that arm to one another and really kind of pull each other up and really, truly kind of be genuine about it and be authentic and really, truly, I mean, honestly, I think that if we can show our human side of things, there's so much that I feel we experience and we feel like we're on our own and we're siloed. And I feel like this industry is kind of built on that, where we kind of feel like we're solopreneurs, a large part of us are solopreneurs and kind of feeling like we have to do it all. And in reality, I think we don't have to do it all by ourselves, and we can learn from each other, and we can learn to improve ourselves, to not work around the clock, like you said, 24/7 down to the bone, and to just, and really actually be able to get a lot of satisfaction for what we do. And we have so much talent all around us. And truly too, being able to learn how we can collaborate with one another. If we're able to come up and pull each other up, right? And we're able to collaborate, well, we all come out winning, really, truly. And so I'm hoping that what this podcast does is just a little bit of that. We're really finding ways to be able to collaborate, really finding ways to be able to give each other those nuggets of information that perhaps, helps to put those puzzle pieces together in this really difficult and challenging world in which we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I hope that we can get to share more with our audience. And I know that we have a lot of great content coming up and a lot of great topics to talk about and guests that we're going to be having on the show. Yeah. So I'm only excited to see where this takes us. And obviously it's, I couldn't think of a better partner in crime to do this with. So thank you. For sure.
Yes. Thank you.
Of course. I hope we are able to grow from even this journey ourselves. We've grown so much already as it is in our own paths, but just this as a new venture, I think it's also a growth opportunity for both you and I. So I'm excited.
Yes, I'm excited. Very.
Awesome.
If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe to our accounts on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts for more updates.
Visit our website at edwalawpodcast.com and follow us on Instagram at edwalaw.podcast. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast.